Hey everybody, it's Minius. I've said it before, Mass Effect Andromeda is a wildly ambitious title, and I'm not simply referring to all the things in the Big Red Leak, though that's certainly part of it. I'm referring to the fact that Andromeda will be a sequel to a game series that's missing a lot of things most sequels have. We'll have to get our hands on the title to be sure, but it might be more accurate to call Mass Effect Andromeda a spin-off. We know that none of the characters from the original trilogy will be returning, at least none of any significance. We know that all of the locations from the original trilogy are being left behind. We know that the social dynamic and power structure are going to be completely different, and it's very possible that entirely new species and organizations will dominate the game. There simply aren't a lot of game series that have changed all of that and thrived, and none of those that have thrived have been as dependent on characters and storytelling as Mass Effect has been. In addition, the last Mass Effect had an ending that, well, didn't go over too well. So given all of this, it's not a certainty that Mass Effect Andromeda will be a success. There are some serious hurdles for the game to get over. So I've come up with a list of 6 things this new title needs to do well to be a success, in order of importance. But first of all, what do I mean by success? Because there are varying degrees of success, from people like the game to best game of all time. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'll consider Mass Effect Andromeda to be a success if it gets a sequel. And I mean a sequel in Andromeda. Of course, there's a chance that the story elements of this new game will rule out a sequel, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The bottom line is that a sequel to Andromeda is not a sure thing. If the game does not do well, BioWare may have to move on to something else. So here are the 6 biggest things, in order of importance, that Mass Effect Andromeda needs to do well to succeed. Of course, there are probably more things, and some of these things bleed over into each other, but whatever, let's get started.
It's never that simple.
The Mass Effect trilogy had a lot of fans, who obviously need to get on board for this new game to be a success. But the transition from Mass Effect 3 to Mass Effect Andromeda has issues. For instance, the Mass Effect 3 ending is heavily fractured, and the Andromeda galaxy is ridiculously far away. The current way things appear to play out, and there are some people saying that this is confirmed, but I'll only say that it's been heavily hinted, is that colonists left the Milky Way galaxy for the Andromeda galaxy before the ending of Mass Effect 3. This allows the new game to bypass that ending, but the solution is not without issues. For instance, why leave the Milky Way? They say that humanity needs a new home, but the Milky Way is largely unexplored. Why leave in the first place? How is the Andromeda galaxy even reachable technologically? The citizens of the Milky Way during the Mass Effect trilogy don't appear to have the capability to do this. How does the fractured community of the Milky Way galaxy put together a move to Andromeda? If the Reapers are on the doorstep, where are the resources to make this trip possible? Failing to put together an acceptable transition between the trilogy and Andromeda could derail the new game before it even gets going. If the story behind why Mass Effect is heading to Andromeda is stupid, or lame, or even meh, fans might not get behind it. Fortunately, this topic is likely to be the first thing that BioWare addressed before getting started with the next Mass Effect game. If they didn't feel like they had a good way for this transition to work, they could have easily done something else within Mass Effect. Probably the biggest complaint about Mass Effect 3 was that your decisions over the course of the trilogy didn't mean anything, or at least didn't mean enough. Now there's a chance here that expectations were too high and perhaps BioWare wasn't given enough time to do things right, but no matter how difficult it is to do decisions right, it can be done, and this should be a primary goal for Andromeda. And I'd like to see these decisions stretch beyond who you romance, which crew members are loyal, and even which characters get to live or die. Your actions should have a legitimate impact on the civilizations you interact with. Perhaps forming an alliance or gaining the support of a particular faction will have dire and perhaps unsettling consequences for their opposition. You should have the option to be selfish towards your own interests and improving the situation for your people, or helping the region as a whole and making life better for as many people as possible at the cost of an ideal position for your people. Meaningful choices help the player put a stamp on their playthrough and dramatically increase the replayability of a game, giving gamers an option to have a completely different experience the second time around. This one is simple and doesn't need much commentary attached to it. Mass Effect is a story-driven franchise, so obviously, the plot will have to be interesting and enjoyable. There are a couple of important factors when coming up with a good plot, but primarily the game will need a compelling conflict that has to be resolved, and that conflict might be best served by a fascinating and complex adversary or group of adversaries. You can call this awe-inspiring, or perhaps call it wow factor if you like. I've taken to calling it a sense of wonder, and it's a major factor in any science fiction or fantasy set story. But first of all, I need to explain what I'm talking about better. Bring yourself back to your first Mass Effect experience. The way diving into the universe, the locations, the lore, the various species, the way all of that made you feel. That is what I'm talking about. Any worthy science fiction or fantasy title has that. The potency to pull you away from your life and, well, dream. There are a whole bunch of factors that can go into this as far as Andromeda is concerned. Wonder can be inspired by interesting and well thought out sapient alien races. Wonder can be inspired by amazing environments that capture the eye and the imagination. Wonder can be inspired by tremendous art direction and graphics. Wonder can be inspired by tackling large-scale hypothetical moral dilemmas.
Is it wrong that part of me wants this?
This sense of wonder is something that the original trilogy had in spades. For this new title to find success, Andromeda must also instill this sense of wonder. The Mass Effect trilogy had amazing characters, and it had a lot of them. These characters helped the universe come alive, made aliens relatable, and made it easier to form a personal attachment to the game. Now, every game, movie, novel, story tries to do this, and it's not something that's easy to do. It's not a stretch at all to say that the number one factor for how successful the Mass Effect trilogy was because of how many awesome characters it had. But now, those characters are gone, and I don't know if their quality can be matched in Andromeda. It's an extremely tall order. But if BioWare can come up with new, engaging characters that are anywhere near as interesting as the characters from the original trilogy, it will help this game out immensely. Because the Mass Effect series has so much going on, combat can easily be overlooked. But we're talking about a video game. And in any video game, gameplay is by far the most important factor. Now you can consider conversation systems and RPG elements gameplay if you like, which is kind of true to an extent, but primarily gameplay is made up of taking on enemies. The Mass Effect trilogy can take around 80 to 90 hours, but most of that time you are taking on enemies with guns and abilities. I expect Andromeda to be the same. Ultimately, the combat is going to be what holds this game together. Good or great combat will make all of Andromeda's aspects better. If the combat is fun, you're more likely to want to go seek it out, go exploring for enemy outposts to take down, finish up side quests to dive deeper into the universe. Bottom line, if the combat isn't fun, Mass Effect Andromeda could easily fail. If the combat is good, Mass Effect Andromeda will be enjoyable. If the combat is great, Mass Effect Andromeda could be a real treat.
There's some fire, and from an alien. Oh, the shame this heaps on those who whine like pups.
If BioWare can do all 6 of these things well, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that Andromeda will be a success. They might even be able to get away with doing a few of these things just okay. But if the combat is lackluster, or the characters are dull, or if the universe and/or plot is uninteresting, this game could be in for some trouble. Out of all the things on this list, I'm only a little worried about a couple things. Maybe meaningful decisions, the plot, and the characters. But what's most important to you? What do you think Mass Effect Andromeda needs to do to succeed? And what are you most worried about? Let everyone know in the comments section below. And if you like this video, please give it a like. It really helps out the channel. Keep an eye on MiniusGC for more Mass Effect videos. But for now...
I should go.